Hello. Take a slow breath. You're safe here. There's no need to rush or feel pressured. This isn't a test, and nothing bad will happen if you stop listening. You can leave anytime. The door is open. But if you have a moment, just a quiet moment in what might have been a very loud day, I'd like to share something with you. Not a lecture, not a sermon, just a thought. A quiet, steady thought that has been trying to find its way to you for a while, not through urgency or fear, but through the simple spaces between all the noise. You've probably carried a lot today, maybe more than anyone knows, more than you've let yourself admit. There's a weight that comes with being human, the weight of expectations, of disappointments, of roles you didn't ask for, but somehow ended up playing. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, the endless to-do lists, the notifications, the conversations that drain more than they give, you might have forgotten one small, steady truth. Not a complicated one, not one that requires a degree in theology or a lifetime of perfect behavior. Just this: you matter. Not because of what you do, not because of what you've achieved or avoided, succeeded at or failed. Not because of the number on a scale, the balance in your bank account, or the opinions of people who don't even know your whole story. You matter because you exist. Full stop. No fine print. No expiration date. Let's set aside the dramatic words for a minute. No declarations from heaven that depend on you not scrolling. No shifting atmospheres that you have to feel, or else you're not spiritual enough. No pressure to type a certain word in a comment box to prove your readiness. Those formulas might work for some people, and that's fine. But here, let's just be honest. The kind of love that actually changes a person doesn't come with performance requirements. It doesn't hold a stopwatch. It doesn't ask you to jump through hoops before it arrives. Real love, the kind that heals, shows up quietly. It sits beside you when you're exhausted. It doesn't demand that you clean yourself up first. For centuries, across almost every spiritual tradition you can name, there's a simple idea that keeps getting buried under fancier language. The idea is this: the source of all life, whatever name you give it, whether God or love or the good or simply mystery, looks at you the way a loving parent looks at a child who's just woken up from a nap. There's no checklist. There's no performance review. There's just quiet, unearned delight. You didn't do anything to earn that look. You just woke up. You just are. And in that moment, before you've accomplished anything at all for the day, you are already enough. Now you might be thinking, that sounds nice. I'd like to believe that. But you don't know my past. You don't know the choices I've made, the things I've said, the ways I've hurt people or been hurt, the nights I've lain awake wondering if anyone would notice if I just disappeared. You're right. I don't know your specific story. I don't know the exact contours of your pain or the particular voices that have told you you're not enough. But I do know the feeling of unworthiness. I know it the way a sailor knows the sea, not as something they've read about, but as something they've been tossed around by. And here's the thing that took me a long time to learn. That feeling, that heavy, familiar feeling of not being enough, is not the final truth about you. It's not even a particularly accurate description of you. It's just a feeling. And feelings, as real as they are not facts. Think of it like this. Imagine a single candle flame in the middle of a dark room. If you place a thick, dark bucket over that candle, the flame doesn't stop existing. It doesn't die. It doesn't lose its heat or its light. It's just hidden, covered, obscured from view. That's what life has done to your sense of worth. The bucket is made of old voices, critics from your childhood, heartbreaks that left cracks in your confidence, failures that you've rehearsed so many times they become part of your inner soundtrack. And somewhere along the way, you started believing that because you couldn't see the flame must be gone. But it isn't. It never was. Your value, your belovedness, your essential worth It has never been destroyed. It's only been covered. So what this moment is, if you want to give it any weight at all, is simply an invitation, not a command, not a requirement, an invitation to lift the bucket, just a little, just enough to see that the flame is still there, still burning, still warm, not because you finally earned the right to uncover it, but because the light was always there, waiting to be seen again. That's the difference between human love and the kind of love we're talking about here. Human love often says, "Show me you're worth it first." The other kind says, "You're already worth it. You just forgot." You might have heard religious language around this idea. Words like grace or favor being chosen. Those words have been used beautifully, but they've also been used to manipulate, to make people feel special at the expense of others, or to make people feel guilty if they don't feel special enough. So let's be careful here. When I say something like, "You are beloved," I don't mean that you're better than anyone else. I don't mean that God has a hierarchy of favorites and you just made the top of the list. That's not how love works. Real love doesn't divide. It multiplies. Think of sunlight pouring through a window. One ray of light doesn't cancel another. Each beam shines fully on whatever it touches, without apology and without shortage. When the sun rises, it doesn't pick and choose who gets to be warmed by it. It just shines, and everything that's willing to be in its light receives the same warmth. That's the kind of love that holds you. It's not competitive. It's not scarce. You don't have to fight for your share of it. You just have to stop hiding from it. And that's harder than it sounds, isn't it? Because hiding has become second nature. You've learned to hide your real thoughts, your real struggles, your real questions. You've learned to present a version of yourself that seems put together, even when you're falling apart inside. You've learned to laugh when you want to cry and to say, "I'm fine," when you're anything but, and none of that is your fault. You learned those survival strategies for a reason. They protected you. They got you through. But here's the question. Are they still protecting you? Or are they now the very walls that keep the light out? Look back at your life for a moment, not with judgment, not with the goal of cataloging your failures. Just look back with honest curiosity. Think of the moments you survived when logically you shouldn't have. The seasons you walked through that should have broken you completely. Yet here you are still breathing. The nights that felt endless, but morning still came. The situations you walked away from that had crushed other people. The strength that appeared when you were already running on empty. You might have called those things luck or coincidence or just a passage of time. But what if they were something else? What if they were signs that you have never been alone? What if they were quiet proofs of a hand that has been holding you long before you ever thought to reach back? You don't have to call that hand God if that word carries too much baggage for you. Call it love. Call it life. Call it the stubborn, inexplicable force that keeps a seed pushing through concrete toward the sun. Whatever name you use, the reality is the same. Something has been sustaining you. Something has been protecting you. Something has been refusing to let you go, even when you let go of yourself. And that something doesn't keep score. It doesn't hold grudges. It doesn't withdraw its presence the moment you mess up. It just stays steady, quiet, patient, waiting for you to notice. You might have heard a verse from an old text that says, "The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end." Those words have been repeated so often they might sound like a cliche, but let them land fresh for a moment. Steadfast love. Love that doesn't waver. Love that doesn't give up. Love that doesn't have mood swings or conditions. That kind of love has been following you longer than you realize. Not chasing you to catch you doing something wrong, but following you the way a parent follows a toddler taking their first wobbly steps. ready to catch you, ready to guide you, ready to celebrate every small movement forward. Now here's where this truth starts to shift things. When you begin to really believe, not just know intellectually, but feel in your bones that you are held by this kind of love, everything changes. Not overnight, not in a dramatic movie montage kind of way, but slowly, like the way spring arrives. One day, you notice that the ground isn't as hard as it used to be. Then you notice a small green shoot where there was only dirt before. Then one morning you wake up and the world is green again. That's how transformation works. It doesn't usually happen in a flash of lightning. It happens in the quiet accumulation of small moments of choosing to believe something different about yourself. Your prayers, if you pray, start to sound different. They stop being desperate pleas aimed at a distant ceiling and start becoming honest conversations with a presence that feels close. You stop begging for scraps and start simply talking to someone who delights in listening. Your presence changes. People might start noticing something different about you, even if they can't name it. Not because you've become louder or more aggressive or more religious, but because something steady and grounded has begun to settle around you. You're less reactive, less defensive, less desperate for approval. And that calmness, that quiet security, is magnetic, not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because people are starving for what you're slowly starting to possess. The simple, radical belief that you are already enough. This is what it means to receive your identity as a beloved child, not as a special title that puts you above others, but as a deep, unshakable grounding that frees you from constantly needing to prove yourself. When you know you're already loved, you can stop performing. When you know you're already held, you can stop grasping. When you know you're already seen, you can stop hiding. And that freedom, that beautiful, terrifying freedom, changes how you move through the world. You start to take risks you wouldn't have taken before. Because failure no longer feels like the end of your worth. You start to love people more generously. Because you're not keeping score or waiting for something in return. You start to forgive more easily, including forgiving yourself. Because you finally understand that your mistakes don't define you. There's an old story about a father and two sons. The younger son demands his inheritance early, which in that culture was a terrible insult, essentially saying, "I wish you were dead so I could have my money." He takes the money, leaves home, and wastes everything on what the story calls reckless living. He ends up broke, humiliated, feeding pigs, and wishing he could eat their food. And in that desperate moment, he decides to go home and beg his father to take him back as a hired servant. He figures he's lost his right to be called a son. But here's the part that still matters. Thousands of years later, while the son is still a long way off, the father sees him. Not after he's cleaned himself up. Not after he's rehearsed his apology speech perfectly. While he's still a long way off, still dusty and smelly and ashamed, the father runs to him. Runs. The father doesn't stand at the door with a clipboard and a list of conditions. He runs down the road, throws his arms around his son, and kisses him. And then he throws a party, because his son who was lost has been found. His son who was dead is alive again. You might know that story. You might have heard it so many times that it's lost its power. But let it sink in again. The father didn't wait for the son to earn his way back. He didn't demand a period of probation or a detailed plan for repayment. He just ran, because that's what love does. It doesn't calculate. It doesn't condition. It runs toward the one who is returning, no matter what they've done, no matter how far they've strayed. And if that story reflects even a fraction of the truth about the love that holds you, then you are not in trouble. You are not on the outside. You are not waiting for approval that might never come. You are being run toward right now in this moment by a love that never stopped watching for you on the horizon. Maybe you've had religious experiences that felt cold or judgmental. Maybe you've been told that God is angry with you, disappointed in you, keeping score of every misstep. That's not the voice of love. That's the voice of fear wearing religious clothing. The voice of love is softer, kinder. It doesn't shame you into changing. It welcomes you home first, and change happens naturally in the warmth of that welcome. You don't become a better person by being told how bad you are. You become a better person by being truly seen and truly loved, and then slowly starting to believe that you're worth becoming better for. So let's be practical for a moment. What does this actually look like tomorrow morning? Not in a spiritual hype video, but in real life, with real dishes in the sink and real emails to answer and real people who might frustrate you. What does it mean to live as someone who knows they are beloved? It means you wake up and before you check your phone, you take one breath and say to yourself, I am already enough for today, not because you have everything figured out, but because the love that holds you doesn't depend on you having everything figured out. It means when you make a mistake, you apologize if you need to, you learn what you can, and then you let it go instead of rehearsing it for the next 3 days. It means when someone treats you poorly, you don't have to crumble, because their opinion is not the final verdict on your worth. It means you can rest without guilt. You can say no without explaining yourself for 20 minutes. You can ask for help without feeling like a burden. You can fail at something and still look at yourself in the mirror with kindness. This is not selfishness. This is the opposite of selfishness. People who truly know they are loved are the most generous people on earth because they're not constantly trying to fill an empty hole inside themselves. They can give freely because they're not afraid of running out. They can listen well because they're not just waiting for their turn to speak. They can celebrate other successes because someone else's win doesn't feel like their loss. Living as a beloved child doesn't make you arrogant. It makes you free. And free people are dangerous in the best way. Dangerous to systems of shame. Dangerous to cultures of scarcity. Dangerous to anyone who profits from keeping you small. There will still be hard days. Nobody is promising you a life without pain. The sun still sets. Winter still comes. People you love will still get sick. Dreams will still get delayed. But when you know who you are at the deepest level, the hard days don't destroy you. They don't erase your identity. They become like storms that pass over a house with a strong foundation. The storm is real. The wind is loud. But the house stands. Not because it's made of brick instead of straw, but because it's built on something solid. You have been building your identity on shifting sand for too long, on achievements, on appearances, on the approval of people who will forget you the moment you leave the room. It's time to build on something else, something that doesn't shift when the wind blows. You might be wondering, how do I actually start? How do I move from knowing this in my head to feeling it in my life? That's a good question. And the answer is simpler than you think, though not necessarily easier. You start by practicing. Every skill worth having requires practice. And believing you are loved is no different. So here's your practice for today. Every time that old voice rises up and says, you're not enough, you quietly answer, I am enough to be loved as I am. Not arrogant, not perfect, just honest. Every time you catch yourself performing for approval, you pause and ask, what would I do right now if I wasn't trying to impress anyone? Every time you feel that familiar ache of loneliness or invisibility, you remind yourself, I'm seen by a love that never looks away. You don't have to feel it at first. Feelings are slow. They follow actions. So act as if you are beloved, even when you don't feel it. Speak to yourself the way you would speak to a friend you truly love. Would you tell your best friend that they're a failure? Would you list all their flaws and mistakes and call them worthless? Of course not. You would be kind. You would be patient. You would remind them of their strengths. So why do you speak to yourself differently? Why do you reserve your harshest criticism for the one person who hears every word you say? It's time to change that. Not because you're trying to be positive, but because the way you talk to yourself shapes the way you live. And the way you live matters. Not just to you, but to everyone who crosses your path. Think of the people in your life who have truly been there for you. The ones who saw you at your worst and didn't run away. The ones who stuck with you through stupid arguments and awkward silences and seasons when you had nothing to offer. What do you feel toward those people? Gratitude, probably. Tenderness. A sense of safety. That's a small reflection of the love that holds you. It's not distant or abstract. It's as close as the breath in your lungs. It's as real as the ground under your feet. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to deserve it. You just have to stop running from it. One more thing, and this might be the most important part. You are not alone in this. Not in the vague spiritual sense of God is with you. Though I believe that's true too. I mean, you are not alone in the practical, human sense. There are other people right now in this same moment reading or listening to words like these, asking the same questions, carrying the same doubts, hoping for the same assurance. You are part of a quiet, invisible community of people who are tired of pretending and ready to rest. You don't have to prove anything to them either. They're just like you, waking up, trying again, forgetting and remembering and forgetting again. That's the human journey. That's the beloved journey. Not a straight line from here to perfect, but a spiral that keeps bringing you back to the same truths, each time with a little more understanding, a little more compassion, a little more peace. So here's what I want to leave you with. No pressure, no demands, just an invitation to take one small step today. Not a dramatic, life-altering leap, just a step. Maybe it's taking 3 deep breaths before you check your phone. Maybe it's sending a kind text to someone you've been avoiding. Maybe it's finally saying out loud to yourself or to a trusted friend, I'm struggling and I need help. Maybe it's simply deciding to believe for the next 5 minutes that you are enough. That's all. 5 minutes. You can do anything for 5 minutes. And if you forget, and you will forget, because forgetting is part of being human, that's okay. There's no shame in forgetting. There's only the opportunity to remember again, and again, and again. Every time you remember, you're lifting the bucket just a little more. Every time you remember, the flame gets a little brighter. Every time you remember, you come home to yourself, to the truth that has been waiting for you all along. You are held. You are seen. You are loved. Not because of what you've done, but because of who you are. And who you are is someone who is worth creating, worth sustaining, and worth calling beloved. That's not wishful thinking. That's not toxic positivity. That's the oldest truth in the book, whispered in every spiritual tradition worth its salt, lived out by every person who has ever found the courage to stop running and rest. So rest now, just for a moment. Let the words settle. You don't need to comment, like, or subscribe to prove anything. If you want it, fine. But if you don't, that's fine too. Your worth isn't measured in engagement metrics. It never was. Just go in peace. Take a breath. And carry this quiet truth with you into the rest of your day, your week, your life. You are already enough. You always have been. And nothing can change that. Thank you for staying with me through this. Not because you had to, but because you chose to. That choice right there is a small act of hope. And hope, even small hope, is never wasted.